Okay, I'm promoting her over right now.
Great.
Okay.
So then we have a quorum.
Hi, I'm here.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, I'm going to
You're
call the
welcome.
meeting.
I'm not sure what was happening, but it just kept saying that I was waiting.
It's not a truck, but hopefully.
You can go ahead and start.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll call the meeting to order at 2 o'clock. This is a meeting of the Livermore Amador Valley Transit Authority Finance and Administration Committee meeting on October 17th. And if we could go ahead and have a roll call, please.
Sure.
I guess, excuse me, I should say that the meeting's going to be via teleconference in accordance with Government Code Section 54953 E2 in order to protect the health and safety of staff, officials, and the general public. So if you could go ahead and do roll, please.
Sure. Director Hernandez.
Present.
Vice Chair Kick is absent. Chair Narum.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and open the meeting to the public. Do we have any electronic communications?
So we didn't receive anything via email, and we don't have any attendees in the meeting currently.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And let's move on to the minutes from September 19th, 2022. Please, Melissa.
Yes, I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the agenda from the meetings prior.
Great. And I'll second. Roll call, please.
Director Hernandez. Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kick is absent. Chair Narum.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And then we'll move on to the item number 5, the treasurer's report for September 2022.
Okay, presented before you is the September 2022 treasurer's report. Believe it or not, we're through 1 quarter of this fiscal year already. I'm not even done with last year. So it's a little crazy, but our revenues, as they tend to this time of year, have started flowing in. So our revenues are at 42.4%. Our expenses I have listed at 18.66%. So we have a healthy cash flow. I was not able to accrue the first 3 or the first quarter, I guess, bills for paratransit because we have not received them yet. So 18.66 is a little lower than it actually is, but not horrendously because it should be for 3 months about $300,000. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Melissa, do you have any questions?
Yeah, how come we haven't received any of the paratransit bills? Question mark.
Well, their current reason.
Sorry, I'm really used to talking into my phone.
It's okay. It's okay. I react the same way. So we contract with County Connection, and we worked with them and went out to bid, and TransDev was awarded the bid. For some reason, County Connection still has not signed that contract with TransDev. And I don't know what it is because the person who has the answer is in Africa for a month. So I don't know why they still haven't signed the contract. But even when they do have a contract, TransDev takes forever to bill. And I don't know why that is. When she gets back from her trip, we're going to have a discussion because our contract with County Connection says that they should have the bill for July to us by August 20th, because I need to accrue that. And they have yet to do that even with the old contract. So I'll be having that discussion with her. But again, she's out of the country. So but as to their reason that they're giving me right now for why we haven't gotten the first quarter is they still have not signed the contract, and I do not know what is holding it up.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the good news is then we're getting interest on the money, right?
That is true. That is true. I just, I don't like inaccurate books, but yes, we're getting interest, and it's funny because under the first contract, they wanted money in like an escrow account because they were afraid we were going to take so long to pay. And I was like, give me a bill. I'll get you your money. The bill's correct. You can get your money in 10 days. It's real quick. But then they've been really slow in billing. So I'm like, if they're having a cash flow issue, I don't know why they're not quicker, but
Really?
it's true. It's true. We have more money in the bank. So, and in reality, it's probably good. I like to at least be able to accrue it, even if we don't pay it, just so I know where we are in our budget.
Right, right. No, I was just being funny.
Yeah. No, it's true. We do. I mean, that's 300,000 we're accruing interest on that they're not. So
Yeah, not chump change.
no, it's not.
Okay, Melissa, do you want to make a motion to forward the report to the board?
The board. Sure, I'll go ahead and make a motion to forward the report to the board, please.
Great. I'll second. Roll call, please.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kick is absent. Chair Narum.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And then we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is kind of the meat of the meeting on pension liability assessment. And Tamara, are you going to kick this off for us?
Actually, I will just introduce Andrew, who you have already met. And in the interest of time, I will let him just start his presentation.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, directors and attendees. Thank you again for your time. Hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. All right. So the goal today is really to give you guys an update on our efforts, where we are at, and there are a couple decision points that we would ultimately like for you to opine on, give some direction as we look to really tighten up the base policy, and start preparing it for your full review and hopefully ultimately adoption. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a review of where we were, just kind of talk through a few of the key points that that we are thinking about in terms of managing the policy, kind of put it in context. And then we will talk about really the 2 key decision points that we're looking for your input on.
Great.
So with that, we're going to jump right in. Yeah, you know who I am. So first, what we're looking at here is your on the left-hand side of the screen is your 2021 pension funding status. This is as of your most recent report, and I apologize, it is a little small. So on the left is the current funding status based on your most recent reports, which were released from CalPERS, right? So again, CalPERS releases these reports in about July. They work a year in arrears. So as you can see, you're about 88% funded, which is exactly where we'd like you to be, which is fantastic. You've got about 880,000 in unfunded liability, which is again that shortfall that we want to be proactively managing to minimize the expense. But as of right now, that $880,000 is about as it currently is accruing, as it will also bring in about or cost an additional $335,000 in interest. So it's about a $1.2 million exposure right now. However, we all probably know that CalPERS, when they wrapped up their fiscal year, they announced that they had a negative 6.1% investment earnings year. So I do a lot of modeling on this. I talk to CalPERS a lot. So what you're looking at on the right is an estimation of the impact of that negative 6.1% year on your plans. So you can see there's quite a bit of a drop, right? You go from about 88% funded to about 77% funded, just because of that negative 6.1% year. So you can see your shortfall is about 1.78 million. And the interest cost on that, which will amortize over about 23 years, is 1.4 million. So we're at 3.2 million. So you go from about 1.2 million in total cost to about 3.2 million in total cost. These are the swings that we're trying to proactively manage by developing a policy. So this is really just a different way of looking at that same information. The top, the black, you have your two plans, your miscellaneous and your PEPRA miscellaneous plan. You can see the miscellaneous plan is currently 86% funded, and the PEPRA miscellaneous is almost 103% funded, which again means you're super funded. That's okay. Again, that's an okay place to be. But as we add the negative 6.1% year, again, we anticipate the miscellaneous plan will drop down to about 75.5%, and the PEPRA miscellaneous will drop to about 90%. So again, these are the swings that we see when we have all this market volatility. And again, this is what we want to protect the district from, is these big swings as they move along. You can really, as I said before, you can really see, the impact of unfunded liabilities, in this graph, these are your payments to CalPERS. These are straight out of the reports. What we're looking at here is the blue is your normal contributions. So those are the payments that the district makes for benefits accrued in the current period, right? So again, people are working, you're providing services, people are accruing these benefits. The red is for benefits accrued in prior periods, right? So in so much as the normal contributions that were made in the past weren't sufficient, unfunded liability is created, and those red bars are that unfunded liability amortization. So your payments over this period, right, from 2017 to 2024, are projected to go up 113,000. But what you can see is that the unfunded liability as a portion of that total goes from about 23.5% to about 44%. That's what we want to minimize, right? Because it's not just that it's expensive, right? It's 6.8% debt that we're carrying. It also, the way these things are amortized, they become a larger and larger budgetary challenge if left unchecked. So we want to be proactively paying into these structures to keep them level, to keep that unfunded liability portion as level and as manageable as possible, as opposed to it really climbing. The good news is that as of right now, this is how your unfunded liability is amortized. I know as you look at this, right, basically what this is this is the way CalPERS asks you to amortize the principal balance that's outstanding, right, which is about $900,000, right, and you pay it off over about 15 years. So you've got about $340,000 in interest costs. This is a trend line that we would want to see. The problem is that we know that this isn't the way it's going to stay because of that negative 6.1% year, which this is what we anticipate that next base to look like. So you can see, again, there's a variety of things here. First and foremost is you can see these swings can be pretty big, right? You go from thinking, hey, we've got $100,000 payment that's going to be generally declining to, oh, wait a minute, we're going to be up at 200,000 in a few years. We need to prepare for it. So that's one thing to just keep in mind, is that these swings do continue to happen out into the future, right? We don't solve this once, we solve this every year, or we solve for it every year, I guess I should say. The second thing is that the way CalPERS amortizes these bases out, and you can see it in this structure, is that they actually push principal backwards. These aren't fully amortized level payment structures each year. They actually push principal backwards in time to smooth this structure in. And you can see it here. This is only 20% of the full amortization. This next year is 40%, and then you go to 60%, and then 80%. And then at year 5, they fully amortize the payment. So they do that. Again, they're trying to help from a budgeting perspective, right? And again, we all need time to prepare, and some of these swings can be pretty big. And so they're trying to help. But by pushing principal back, it becomes more expensive because you have to pay interest on that outstanding liability. Because ultimately, this isn't about you paying CalPERS, this is about you paying your employees. They're just creating structures to help amortize this out over time. So we want to be as proactive as we can to manage this structure so that it's mitigating the exposure to the 6.8%, but also to the budgetary challenges that we're facing. Stop me if you have any questions. I'm just trying to refresh, kind of re-level set, because again, the next thing I was going to go about over, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time.
Excuse me, could you go back to that slide? I do have a question for Tamara. Tamara, do we do any kind of 5-year projections for budgeting and so forth? And if so, how does this mesh with what you've would have used in the projections?
We do. We actually did a 10-year, I like to call it a guesstimate, for our budget for the SRTP. As far as how this meshes, we take the estimates that we have from CalPERS of what the payments are going to be, and we escalate them based on what the normal payments are going to be, because we haven't been paying. We haven't been paying into the unfunded liability other than the amount they ask for every year, which is about 100,000. So our budget actually only reflects that. But especially because we have so much in reserves, I would like to get some of this unfunded liability taken care of. So that's kind of where this came up. As far as budgeting, like I said, we just kind of budget what we're required to pay every year.
Okay,
Yeah,
All right.
we've never budgeted for this. This came up, I don't know, a year or so ago, Michael and I started talking about it, and then, things happened and we didn't quite get to it right then. So, it is something that I don't like having that hanging over our heads. So it's something I would like to get into our budget and into our forecasts.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, my comment would be that instead of doing a 10-year forecast, let's do a 3 to 5 year forecast.
Right.
'Cause I think it's a little bit more realistic to work with sooner versus 10 years out.
It for sure is. We've always done our forecasting. We did a capital 5 year, but in terms of operating, we've just always done it for the SRTP. And we probably really need to start doing that so that we know kind of what's coming down the pike. We have a better idea of what's happening next year and the year after than we do 10 years from now. And our 10-year projections are always kind of interesting because they show our 10 years ago when we did them, they showed that now we would have this huge negative, right? So we know that's not true. And 10 years from now, it's going to show the same thing. So I don't like the 10-year forecast, but we can start doing it. Well, when Paul Matsuoka was here, we used to do them, and he called them dirty budgets for like a 3-year period, because they weren't 100% accurate, but they gave us an idea of what was coming up, without pandemics and that kind of thing messing it up. But yeah, we used to do them, and then and when Paul left, they just kind of stopped happening.
Okay. Are you good, Melissa?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So the only thing I would add to that is, again, this isn't, so what we're looking at here, this won't be on the books, so to speak, until next July. Right. So again, even if in a budgeting process, right, having this line of sight really requires doing kind of pre-analysis. But again, you can imagine, you can see why this is valuable, is to go through this process of having a policy where you're looking out in advance, so that again, from a budgeting perspective, you can say, look, these hills potentially could be coming, recognizing that next year, right, we could have a very positive year and your UAL could decline. But again, it gives you that additional year of anticipation and planning in terms of thinking, how do we prepare for this if this stays the same? So it's always a moving target with the unfunded liabilities. So again, these are the baseline mitigation techniques that are in the policy. Again, we will go into far more detail. Again, as we really start into the fine grained policy itself. What I really want to focus on is that all of these are really designed to get money into CalPERS up to a funded percent. Right, again, the goal is to pick a funding target for your CalPERS plans, and say we are going to proactively work to get money into CalPERS to achieve a funded level. As a general rule, I'm looking at 85%, right, and I'll explain why in a bit. But that's generally where we're looking at. And so, if you're under that number, how do we work toward getting dollars into CalPERS to get it to 85%? And then beyond that, you stop putting money into CalPERS, but you don't stop putting money into managing your pensions. And the additional monies go toward a 115 trust, which is that section down at the bottom there. The advantage of a 115 trust is that you're going to earn money comparably to what you would earn in CalPERS, right? You're out of the general code in terms of investments, so that you can go further out on the risk profile, like CalPERS does. So you're earning something comparable to what CalPERS would earn, but the monies are still dedicated to your pension payments. The advantage of a 115 trust is that you have flexibility as to exactly what you're spending it on. And generally speaking, there are two things that you can put money into when it comes to paying your pension costs. One is paying your unfunded liabilities, which is the primary purpose of a 115 trust. But then you can also pay normal cost. So in situations where, let's just say we're in a happy place where your plans are 95% funded and you've got an additional 10% of your total needed, in a 115 trust, you're actually conceptually super funded. You have more than you need. If that was with CalPERS, you couldn't do anything with that money. The money is gone. But if that money's in the 115 trust, you can use that money to pay normal cost, as opposed to having it just sit there and accrue. So there's a point where you have more flexibility to free up money on your general operational side by paying normal cost out of a 115 trust. Conversely, if you're in a bad situation, the 115 trust is a reserve that helps you kind of attack those bases so that you're leveling out that payment structure without having to aggressively pull money out of your operating funds. So again, that's where we want to really look at creating that 115 trust as that mechanism to balance, recognizing that that's kind of one of those key building blocks of having those monies, while we're also going to every year, as I said before, really going to be thinking about how do we use these strategies within our budget framework, to make payments proactively, whether it's into CalPERS or whether it's into a 115 trust, right? We want to be proactively paying to get ultimately, because the obligation is ultimately to fulfill a full 100%. The question is how do you do that as efficiently as possible? So those are the key things that we're going to be looking at, in the policy. Really, the two decision points that we're looking for opinions on, and I will. I know there isn't a whole lot here, but these are the kind of the key pieces: is what is the CalPERS funding target that you want to set, and what is the 115 trust maximum funding? And I know, like I said, there's more. Let me explain both of them again. First one is, how much money do you want to be proactively paying into CalPERS? And then, if you hit that target, you say, okay, now we're going to put money into a 115 trust, or we're going to just hold steady, right? As a general recommendation, again, I would look at 85%. If you asked me 2 years ago, I would have said 90. But with the swings that we have seen over the last several years, with the 21.3% year and this negative 6.1% year, we see that there's generally about a 10% hit to plans that will happen in disruptive markets, so to speak. So for us, creating a little bit more buffer, with say going to 15% in a 115 trust, gives the district more flexibility on how it allocates those assets, as opposed to going to a policy target of 90 or 95%, which again is a good thing. It's not bad to have that much money in with CalPERS, but you also have less flexibility to address some of the swings as you're moving forward. So that's baseline number one. The second one is the 115 trust maximum. So again, when we look at both plans together, we look at your CalPERS plans and we look at the 115 trust. We combine those totals and we compare it to your total accrued liability. And we say, how much money do you have overall as a percent of the total? Now, at some point, right, again, as I said before, we can imagine a positive scenario where CalPERS has a 15% year. Chances are your 115 trust is going to have a 15% investment earnings year as well. So there's the potential that you have way more money than you need. At what point do we set a limit and say no more than this? Now, we could conceptually say 100% is the top line. The argument against that is that the next year you might have a bad year, right? And you want to have that excess money in the 115 trust to pay into CalPERS. So again, recognizing that we get these 10% swings, not all the time, but they do happen. My baseline recommendation would be 110% for your total maximum. And then at that point, if you have more than 110%, you start paying normal cost out of the 115 trust, which frees up money, for the general fund to do other things. So that's my baseline, but it's definitely a discussion, and I'm happy to answer questions or however else you'd like to approach the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, do you have any questions, thoughts, comments?
No, I mean, he probably knows way better than we do, but I actually agree with him.
Okay, I guess I have a little different perspective. When we pay down the unfunded liability, that money is gone. Excuse me, sorry. And if they have a bad year, we're we're down even more. And so I mean, it makes more sense to me to put the extra money into the 115 trust because we have control of it. And you touched on that, if let's say there's some kind of disaster and we need money, we can go to the 115 and even get the regular payment out of it in addition to the unfunded liability. I struggle with the idea of just this extra money going to CalPERS, and if they have a bad year, which they do, then you're just right back where you are, and the money's gone.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. What I would offer is the 115 trust is probably going to perform about as well as CalPERS, right? So the 115 trust in that respect, is going to experience the swings that you would see with CalPERS. Again, within a range. But generally speaking, you're going to see those swings as well. The other thing is that once that money's in the 115 trust, it has to pay pension costs. So, and I'm just going to bounce back here for a second. So the most that you could get out of it in any given year and again, assuming that this holds relatively steady, would be about $150,000.
But couldn't we could take more out and then put it towards the unfunded liability?
Well, yeah, you could, yeah, but the additional amount that you could draw out beyond paying the unfunded liabilities would be paying normal cost, which again would be about $150,000 above and beyond what you would have paid out of the general fund in that year.
So we've had a 115 trust now for probably 6 years, and it generally has performed slightly better than CalPERS. And that's just another reason why I struggle giving that extra money to CalPERS as opposed to putting it into the 115. It's gone. Once you do it, you have no control over it.
Well, and that's really that's where again, if we think of it as ultimately the whole pie is your responsibility, right? It's a question of how do we divvy up the pie? Again, for me, it's if we say 80% or even 75%, right? That's totally reasonable, right? I mean, if that's the direction that you guys think that makes more sense to put more, into 115 trust and say our policy target is going to be 75%, that's a completely legitimate answer, right? That gives you again more flexibility, which is again what the 115 trust does. I just caution that again, it's not infinite flexibility, right? It's not like general reserves.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting on the target. Our finance people say, if below 80% is when they, lose sleep, so to speak. They would, in other words, to try to get to 80%, we're not there.
Right. Yeah. When I talk to a lot of the actuaries, again, healthy, as a general rule for me, again, my conversations is 85 to 90%. But to your point, right, I start losing sleep when it drops below 80 as well. That's again where I get concerned. But again, so long as you are proactively paying into a 115 trust, for me that is equivalent to putting money into CalPERS.
Right. Yeah, I want to be clear. I mean, I think we have to set money aside. I just feel like there's something about having control of the money or having control of the money in the 115, even though it can only go to pensions, that just makes more sense to me.
So if we drop that funding target to 80%,
I would be better with that.
But you still have to be able to pay down that funded, that CalPERS funding target. So.
Right, but you're putting it into the 115 trust. I'm not suggesting we're not, setting aside money. Don't misunderstand me.
No, I get that, but eventually it's going to have to be paid, correct? I mean, I know it is.
Right.
But that's where I'm seeing where he's being a little bit more aggressive, saying 85% and put the 115 into to, or the 110% to the 115 trust fund.
Right, I just, well, again, I just, more comfortable if we have the money, and this is all gonna kind of level out anyway. You know, the projections are that I've seen are around 2030, when you're all into Pepra employees and everything, this is all gonna kind of begin to take care of itself.
Well, I would, not that I want to disagree, but I would just caution, right, that the Pepper plans are young right now. Right. And so they don't experience the swings, but we can imagine 30 years from now, when there's another financial crisis, those plans will experience the same structural challenge, right? They're structurally administered the same way, even though there are additional funding mechanisms to, hopefully bolster the funding. But if there's a financial crisis, we will have UAL again.
Sure, but I guess what I was saying is the charts I've seen is that the worst peaks, I think, around 2028. If you keep making your payments, they're projecting as the Pepper employees.
As they come
the plastic employees retire, and that the worst peaks around 2028 and begins heading down.
It's interesting. Because I've done a lot of these analyses. What I would describe is that this is a wave. The wave will continue to move, but with the classic plans, at some point the shore comes.
Right.
And the question is really, how low can we get this before it hits the shore? Otherwise, it can be a financial tsunami. So that's really that's the analogy that I like to use, because as you watch these things change over time, they kind of push backwards. And so it's really a question of what's the financial situation, over the next, 10 or 15 years. Again, CalPERS does a pretty good job of hitting their investment targets, right? Overall, long-term. So if that holds, right, hopefully we can smooth these structures down, and the classic plans can, walk away into the sunset and enjoy retirement. But if we have a financial crisis in 10 years, right, the time is going to be very compressed. And that's a big concern. So how do we proactively have that 115 trust, there to be paying? And the other interesting I'll offer here is the 115 trust. It's not just going to be about, well, we've got the money there to offset this. It's also, we can proactively pay on this new base to level the structure out, which actively lowers the carry cost associated with that new red base that's there. So there's going to be a lot of smaller incremental steps that you can take using the 115 trust to lower the cost of this interest, just by shifting funds between the two, right, incrementally over time, to help balance it. So again, which goes back to and reinforces your position, which is 80% is not a bad number, right? It gives you that space to use the 115 trust to be not only just saying we want to get to 80%, but we also want to proactively manage the structure.
Right. I think that's more where I come down on this, based on, the work I've done in our city. I happen to be on the finance committee for the city, where we've, put a lot of thought into it, and we've got much larger numbers and issues and things. But I just, there's a fundamental question to me when you pay the bill, the money's gone. And if you can keep the money in the 115, the right balance, then you've got control.
Right. Very much so. I completely agree. So, sounds like our baseline direction is going to be to shift this to 80%.
Well, wait a minute. I'd like to hear from Melissa, though.
Oh, please.
No, I would leave it at 85%. I get what you're saying, and I understand the fact that, and I know our cities are a little bit different, and ours is closer to what you're saying right now with regards to the 85%.
Okay. Well, we got a little.
There is no third vote.
No.
Well, we can hold this. I think it's a good conversation. We don't have to make the final decision right at the moment.
Well, I would say, I think 85% maybe, we need to keep moving this forward, and, we can maybe do a little more work on the implication of if it's 80 or if it's 85. But I mean, I don't think anybody's in disagreement that we either need to be paying CalPERS or we need to be putting the money in the 115 to accrue it towards our unfunded liability. So I think fundamentally what you've done and your draft document here on the policy, I thought was great. I mean, my only question was just around holding the money versus just paying it all out for me. But I think this is a really good start. And I mean, I think we can just put it in maybe 80. What's the difference between 80 and 85?
Well, right now, it would be, let me bear with me a second here. Well, under the current, right, you're at 88%, we're at 77% here. It's a couple $100,000 maximum.
Yeah, see, it's
recognizing that this pie grows over time, right? Yeah, so
sure.
Right. So again, that whatever that number is, it would continue to evolve. I think if our conversation was 90 or 85, I would be more hesitant. I think either 80 or 85 is acceptable, right? These are, again, because it's just a question of when we're going to start proactively paying into a 115 trust.
Okay.
Andrew, does it have to be 80 or 85? Could it be 83? I'm just saying.
It could be 80.
It's only 5% when you look at it. It's really 5. What's the difference? The difference is 5%.
We could split the baby at 82 and a half.
Okay. See, the 0.5% a little too much for me. I mean, that's just a thought. Or because I do want to move this forward, I do want to take the policy to the board in December, because I want to do it before you leave the board, Kathy. So, and we probably won't have an FNA meeting in November. So, I mean, we could take it to the board with this presentation and let them choose 80 or 85, or we can take a recommendation from you and Melissa. It's up to you guys how we do it.
So what did you say the difference was? I mean, with regards to between the 80 and 85%?
It is about $200,000
right now.
Yeah.
Kathy, we can always meet in the middle.
I'm happy. I'm more than willing to meet at the 83. If you're good with that, Melissa.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think then if you could change it to 83 and the 110, the 110% is fine.
Okay.
Is it appropriate to add a little bit of in the policy about, the idea of, wanting to maintain control of the money via the 115 trust?
Yeah, we could add that as part of the justification for maintaining the 115 trust. Sure. Yeah, I mean, if that's again, it's ultimately your policy.
I mean, because there's really two reasons to have the 115. It's to be able to get better than LAF rates, and it's about the control.
Right.
I'll go back to the city, and we look at it and say, well, if we were to have, God forbid, an earthquake and major damage, we could take the money from the 115 trust, make the entire CalPERS payment, and have that cash there to deal with whatever our issues are. And so that's, I'm looking, obviously we're not that, it's a little different situation here, but something in there about it allows us a little bit of control and flexibility so that people understand that they've got the money, and if something happened with LAVTA, that there's a source of funding that could be tapped by having the 115 trust make the CalPERS payment, the full payment, and freeing up the money in the budget.
We will add that language. Yeah, no, it's great, right? And there in the base policy, right? There's language about kind of all the whys we
Right.
can definitely add more explanation around, why the 115 trust.
I think I would appreciate that if you could.
Perfect. Yeah, we can do
Melissa-
that.
Okay.
Andrew,
Melissa, what are
oh,
your
sorry.
thoughts?
No,
Any
I
more?
agree with you. I just, pardon?
Oh, any other thoughts?
Can
Sorry.
you guys hear? No, I'm good with that. I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. All right. So does that give you what you need?
Those are the key issues that are outstanding. Again, that there are obviously some language changes to make. But you're good with the 110% as the max
Yes,
funding?
I am. Melissa?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And I should see, do we have any, Jennifer, any attendees?
No.
Okay. So I'll open and close the public hearing. And do we need a motion? This is information. Actually, this is information only, so we're good. Okay, great. Well, I certainly appreciate your time answering all our questions and things.
No, I'm more than happy to answer questions, right? This is one of those topics that, even seasoned finance professionals, right, usually are scratching their heads on. So anytime I can answer questions, I am more than happy to. Thank you for your time this afternoon. We'll get the language changes in, and we will be getting ready for December, well, hopefully adoption.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
so we'll move
Kathy.
on to, I'm sorry.
I said, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Agenda item 7, tomorrow preview of upcoming committee agenda items.
Give me just 1 second because I had that pulled up and now I can't find it. So let me get back into it. Sorry, I had a contract issue contacting me during the meeting. Okay. Although I should have this honestly memorized. Okay, so November, we will probably cancel the meeting because it always falls right around Thanksgiving. Just to let you guys know, normally in October, we would have brought the draft ACFR to the committee, but the auditors are behind. So I'm going to take it directly to the board in November, but I will email it to both of you. That way, if you have questions, or excuse me, all 3 of you, that way, if you have questions, you can email me beforehand. And it'll go in November too. I still have to, it has to be done before the end of October because there's other reporting that has to be done, but they're not quite there yet. So they're close, but I've sent back a bunch of corrections. And then December meetings tend to be canceled as well because of Christmas and New Year's. Although I don't know if our new executive director is going to want to maybe make sure she gets in an F&A, so that may change. But anticipate November and December being canceled for just the committee meeting. And then January, we'll have our treasurer's report, our minutes, the draft 2023 legislative program, because Jennifer Yeaman should be back before then, and she'll have that ready to go. And then February minutes and treasurer's report, March minutes and treasurer's report. Although you won't be here for this, Kathy, unfortunately. But I do want to change up if Christy's okay with it. The way we do our budget, I want to do some prioritization with the board, probably in January. I'll probably start with the F&A committee, seeing, kind of what their priorities are in terms of our various capital projects. We keep hearing from the public and they're like, oh, why don't you do this? And why don't you do this? And it kind of occurred to me that we don't really go to the board and find out what your priorities are in terms of like capital projects. We've been doing kind of, I won't say 100% staff, but a lot with staff. I mean, we know the board wants the Atlantis facility and we know you guys want the SAB. But other projects, we're just like, hey, there's a grant. Let's apply for that because we want to do this. And I think we need to really kind of, they'll do some of that with the long range transit plan. So that'll give me a starting point. But I'd really like to get more board direction. And I'm sure Christy will be on board with that. More board direction in how we plan, what we're doing, what we apply for grants for, what we're doing moving forward. So that's my hope for probably the January F&A committee.
Okay.
So Tamara, what are you hearing from the public? You said that said that you're hearing from the public. So what is it exactly that you're hearing?
Well, most recently, Stephen Dunbar reached out to Gina Bonanno. And he feels that all of our bus stops, or the majority of our bus stops, because there's a great argument to be made for not school trippers, should have benches. And when we put a stop in, when we initially put it in, you know, some get benches automatically because they're like the premium shelters, so they're like the rapid route. Some we don't put benches in because most of the activity at that stop is people getting off the bus, right? Like going is the other side of the street, coming back is that side of the street, right? So we don't necessarily put them in, but we don't really have a policy, and I don't really want a huge 500-page policy, but we don't really have a policy saying, you know, when we decide to put in a bench and when we don't. And a lot of times it's because you'll have like someone reach out and say, hey, this stops in front of a place that's used by a lot of senior citizens and you don't have a bench and we'd like a bench. And so we kind of put one in. I'd like something a little more, maybe, you know, I'd like to know if, you know, benches at stops are a priority for the board, or not, because, you know, we have the Atlantis facility, and we have the SAV, and we have this BRT bus stop project, and we have the BRT hub project, and, you know, what the priorities are, especially since we're getting a new capital projects manager. I don't want to send them in too many directions at once. But also, like, when it comes to things like that, we don't have board direction. Like when you think we should put in a bench versus not a bench, or shelter versus not a shelter. We've just been kind of doing it as we do it.
No, and I think that's a great point to bring up, but I definitely think that it should be up to the city as well, because the cities know their cities best.
Well, even if we want to put one in, we can't do it without the city.
Exactly. But
yeah,
but I mean, there's always reasons, right? There's always reasons why or why not we have things. And so, yeah, I definitely would want to have further conversation with that. And so, no, that's fine. And I think that you bring up a good point that, you know, maybe we should pinpoint something down with regards to what are our priorities.
Right. That's my thought. Like I said, the long range transit plan, I'm bringing on a new executive director, will kind of kick that off anyway. But I'd really like to do it for the budgeting process, because our current capital budget has way more projects in it than we're actually going to get done in the next 2 or 3 years. And so, you know, we're bringing in a new capital projects manager, and we're going to be sending him the priorities right now are, hey, we already have this money and the funding agencies are pushing us to spend it. So, which is great because we have the money. But, you know, moving forward, once those projects are done, where do we want to go? So that's my thought.
Okay.
Well, and I think it's also a good point to bring up, you know, there's so many grants out there, right? And grants being proposed by not only, but a lot from the Fed. And I think it's good for us to take advantage of those. And I know we have a lot of projects in the works that you say that, oh, we may not be able to get done, but I think it's good to be able to get the funding.
Right.
So we can get them done.
Right. Yeah, we definitely can't do them without funding. It's just, you know, say you have a funding source and it's eligible for, you know, we have 5 projects that we could apply for. It would be good to know what the priority is, so we apply for that project versus one that's maybe not as high a priority. So, but yeah, we pretty much presently apply for all the money that's out there. It's just a matter of where it goes to.
Okay. I think it, you know, that makes sense to get some priorities, because there's only so many people to do the projects, and
right,
they'd be getting the most important ones and the ones that are essential done. All right. Melissa, any matters initiated?
No, I have no matters to bring forward. Thank you.
Okay, I don't either. All right, so tentatively the next meeting is November 22nd. We'll look for cancellation if there's nothing that has to be heard from you tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There's nothing.
Okay.
Nothing pressing. You never know, because Jennifer Yeamans may be back by then, and she may have something that I don't know about.
Okay. And so with that, then I think we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting and see everybody at the board meeting.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.